Yeah, I'll go ahead and admit it. I really like this episode. So, we get to see some good Roy stuff, so to speak, which is important because we need to establish him as a character because he hasn't been a character for 8 years, even by his own reckoning. I do like how Ollie is absolutely struggling to deal with all of this. Just using the wrong words and stumbling over himself and just constantly messing up, right? I don't mean he's a bad person. In fact, that's the opposite of what I mean. He's just so flustered by this that he has no idea how to deal with it. And it shows. Probably helps that he has Alan Tudyk voicing him, but you get the point. So, I mentioned a while ago about how Red's big breakdown about being a clone never made sense to me. By contrast, Roy having a breakdown would make perfect sense to me. If I just was suddenly, hey, I just missed 8 years of my life, I'm missing my arm, and I've been out of commission while a clone has replaced me for... Yeah, that's pretty traumatizing. But no, he handles it very well. He decides to go off and become a vigilante. Oh my god. Roy! Anyways. So they go to the grotto. And I wrote something in my notes, and I want to share with you word for word. It says, oh, there's Todd. There's a nice bit where Beetle mentions how he has no one to look up to, which is funny because that was actually a bit of a character thread in season 1 for several characters. Superboy, excuse me. But he does have the Beetle, so that's awful. Getting terrible advice from a psychopathic weapon. Yeah. It is nice to see. They have the funeral, or rather the gravestone, and we see Cheshire really did care. Of course she did. We saw that in season 1. And Sportsmaster really didn't. He's a horrible human being. Shocking, I know. But he just is interested in the fact that people are pushing against his cred. Someone went after my daughter without covering it by me. That's not cool. So that's going to be an interesting niggle. I hope we kill Sportsmaster in this series. There's been a surprisingly small amount of death in this show so far. We need more death, I think. Yeah, that's a good idea. Don't quote that out of context. So Roy grabs some gear and goes for some revenge. Takes out a Zeta tube on the way. How hard are those things to make? I've wondered before about the finances and infrastructure of the League. Anyways, and then there's this bit where Luthor. So the missile comes in, and I had this comment: Luthor is not the person who would put himself on display if he didn't feel he had some way of dealing with it. And I mean, that's his shtick, right? Meanwhile, there's Wendy Harris, who I have no idea who she is, trying to cheer up Connor. And of course, Connor's flipping out because this is the first birthday he's had in a while without Megan. And I like how Megan even remembers that too. Then we have the bridal, baby shower, bridal shower, whatever it's called. And then Captain Cold shows up. Now, this is actually really funny, because my first thought was, oh, really? I've always thought he's a pathetic villain. So he shows up, and he looks at them and he says, and I quote, "I'm completely doomed, aren't I?" Now, you might think, why do you like that so much, Lore? Because it's a perfect counterbalance to the situation going on between Roy and Luthor. Captain Cold is completely out of his league, and so is Roy. Luthor may be just a relatively normal human being, but he is extremely smart, and he kind of has the Batman thing going for him. He prepares, he is observant, and he is adaptable. He knows how to use his voice and his mind, and those are his assets. I'm trying to think how to phrase this properly. It's his unflappable belief that what mankind's greatest thing is not the superpowers, but up here, that probably has helped him to stay in the game for as long as he has. And frankly, because he's been in the game for so long and on top of the game for so long, at this point, it's going to be pretty hard to unseat someone like that. He's either going to have to, get old to the point where he loses his edge, which will probably eventually happen, or he's going to have to meet someone who is powerful enough, stupid enough, motivated enough, or desperate enough to just bypass all his BS and go straight to him. And that is not Roy Harper, who barely takes on Mercy. And I'm actually a little impressed he takes on Mercy as well as he does. And I'd also like to call Bullen a guy who's been on ice for 8 years and probably isn't even fully aware of how his body functions at this new age and at this new physical state. I mean, he was a kid, basically, when he was kidnapped, right? And he's I mean, yeah, no, I don't buy it, is what I'm trying to say. But whatever, he takes on Mercy and he takes on Luthor, and Luthor's response, I wrote down his quotes here. You know, we gave you anesthesia. Your method seems more violent. He's like, oh, I can go with that. So I'll do anything for my revenge. Vengeance is a sucker's game, son. So true. Now, Luthor, most iterations of Luthor have their own versions of fixating on revenge. And Lord knows the most common Luthor problem is his fixation on supers, both Superman and supers in general. But I believe him when he says vengeance is a sucker's game. Because A, it is, and B, he's far more interested in other things. Revenge is nice, but that's a appetizer, a side dish. Now, you need a main course to really aim for, like, oh, I don't know, satisfaction. And I love his next quote. I don't believe in risk. I believe in preparation. So Luthor does what he does best. He buys his enemy out. Now, he didn't have to. He had the drop on Roy, and he had won that situation like 3 times over. But in so doing, he basically manages to turn an enemy into a potential asset. And more to the point, he buys him out. Like, even if he is not an asset, he has successfully bought his way out of trouble with basically no loss. And that's the point. That's the long-term business-like perspective here, at least a proper business perspective. Sure, I could engage in this violent thing and have people killed or whatever. Or we could bypass all that mess and profit. And I don't mean profit as in terms of money. I mean gain. Gain resources, gain information, gain assets, gain personnel, whatever. And that's what Luthor does here. So now we have Arsenal. I'm going to probably keep calling him Roy. I've already been trying to call the other one Red to distinguish him. I suppose we'll see how this new thread goes, because we just can't stop having new threads, can we? Next time.